So, Mr. Schweitzer, I'm struggling to figure out numbers because several times you've gotten close to give us a number of this threat of Chinese birth tourism companies and such, and you've drawn short of saying any specific number. Yet in your written testimony, this practice, you say this practice has flourished over the past 15 years, meaning at least 750,000 and possibly 1.5 million Chinese nationals now hold U.S. citizenship by birth on American soil. Now, Professor Frost tells us there's a violation of federal law here if you're using this practice in coming into the United States. And your rejoinder to her is Democrats don't pay any attention to those laws.
Well,
so that's what you said, sir.
Yep.
Obama, Biden, they don't pay attention to those laws, suggesting that Republicans do. So give me a number. How many prosecutions under President Trump, either in his first term or this term, have there been for violations of this practice, birth tourism?
That's an excellent question, Senator. A couple of things have happened. One, there has been prosecution of some birth tourism companies.
How many?
I'm not sure of the number, sir.
Not sure of many numbers before us. You've got some big claims, but when it comes to numbers, you ought to be able to tell us how many have been prosecuted.
The initial number of the estimate of Chinese birth tourism comes from Chinese sources, what they believe it is on their side.
I'm asking you what the Republican administration of Donald Trump in his first term or this term have prosecuted under this existing law that you say is creating 1.5 million Chinese Americans, American Chinese, however. How many?
Well, there's a couple of things. Number one, during the Trump administration, they have now instructed Customs and Border Patrol, if somebody does appear to be pregnant, to set them aside for further questioning.
They have now done it. Suggests they did nothing before. You want to add them to the category of presidents who didn't pay attention to the law?
They did it during the first term, and they also...
How many?
I'm not sure, sir.
Well, I wish you would be sure. You're making some pretty wild claims here about 1 million Chinese who are going to vote absentee in the next election or do something that may be suspicious. You ought to come back to us with some data that backs that up. Professor Frost, is this law being enforced?
So I FOIA'd the Trump administration to try to get information about whether they were enforcing this law, and it's been over a year. I've appealed. I've gotten no response. Mr. Schweitzer, I would love help getting information. This administration has not shared whether it's enforcing this regulation.
Isn't that interesting? The premise of this hearing is the Chinese are invading America through surrogates and birth tourism, and it's something we should all be concerned with, and yet they won't tell us what this administration is doing to stop it with the existing law. Something's missing here.
Agreed.
Let me ask you, when it comes down to the situation where families, if this executive order is found to be valid by the court, how would a family go about establishing that they were properly in the United States and citizens under the new executive order?
So we have a couple of pages of memos from the Social Security Administration, the Department of State, USCIS that they issued this summer if the executive order goes into effect. They're vague. They're just a couple pages each. They say every family must provide, quote, acceptable evidence, unquote, of their own citizenship or immigration status at the time of the child's birth. And if they can't do that, the child isn't a citizen.
How do they prove it? I mean, what kind of documentation? Clearly, it's not the birth certificate.
Yeah.
What is the documentation to prove?
Yes, you'd have to go, you potentially would need to go back generations, because if your great-grandparent came in without permission or was temporarily visiting when the child was born, your grandparent was born, then that would put into question your citizenship according to the Trump administration's reading of the Citizenship Clause, which of course I think is wrong.
This is part of the Steve Miller plan to save America in his eyes. And I think of the SAVE Act in the same category, that we have to prove now before we can vote that we're citizens. And there are only two ways to prove it, basically. A passport, which half of Americans don't own, or a birth certificate, which many women will find their maiden name on, that doesn't square with the name they're using for registration today. Why is this administration, this is a rhetorical question. I'm trying to wonder why this administration is so damn determined to question whether people are here legally. We want people to be here legally, or whether or not they're trying to diminish the rights of other Americans before an election, which they're very worried about. I yield.